the first thing you have to realize that if you do it where you do the 6B on the back and you put it down, it will reverse the image. But if you do it this way, it saves you all the trouble. Even if you have text in it and you do it the way that I'm going to show you, your text will be transferred onto this block backwards. So when you carve it and you print it, your text will be in the right orientation, right? So I took this, I drew this. However you get your image, you'll get it on computer paper, okay? So if you wind up going, this fits right on here. So if your image is filling up this whole piece of paper, it will fit on the 8x10. Can that see me from here? That will fit on the 8x10 block, right? If you wind up doing something bigger, you'll want to get, I have 11x17 paper, that's computer paper. Why am I saying computer paper? Because if you use any other paper, this process of transferring it to your block does not work very well. But if you use computer paper, for some reason I've discovered that it makes a miraculous transfer. So what you do is you just take your image, however you've gotten it, and you take your wonderful 6B pencil and you go over all the lines nice and heavy. With the image, you're basically going to take it, you will put your block down first and you'll trace so you know where your block is. And then this has two sides. It has a rough side and it has a smooth side. And you don't want to transfer your image on the rough side. The rough side is not good for carving and printing. The smooth side is the intended side. So you put it down, you line it up, and you kind of want to find a table where you can flip it over and leave it in place, right? So, and when you're doing this, you don't want your paper to move around. You just want it to stay. So you kind of have to have one hand holding it and another kind of using your thumb and going around and making sure that you're getting all the lines that you have, okay? So you want to make sure you get a nice firm transfer, and then it transfers it on there. So if you can see, it transfers the image, right, backwards. So when you print it, it's going to come out the way that you see it on your paper, okay? So if you have text on here, it'll be backwards on here. And the biggest mistake people is make, oh, my text is backwards. And I'm like, that's what you want, all right? You want that because when you print it, it comes out looking exactly the way that you drew it on the computer paper, right? So the next thing you do after that is you want to carve it. Now, you have to think about positive and negative space. So you always want to keep your hand behind you so you hold your block, and you don't want it to be up like that. You just need enough to keep the surface flat here and, divots in just a little bit there. So you can carve, and one thing I like to do is turn my block and use that as a tool to actually, and sometimes it's a little bit like mowing the lawn where you just kind of go work in rows. And it's very cathartic and it's very fun, and it's like, because this is not like wood, this is not like linoleum, which are really hard to carve. It's not like butter, but it just has a real nice consistency that allows you to carve relatively easy. So if you practice on the small block, you'll have a lot of fun doing this. And you'll want to get some practice in before you go to your larger one. So now I can get these bigger areas, but now I'm going to switch. And I think that there's probably enough for everybody to have two different carvers. So you don't have to be switching these out. These change out, but I like to have two different sizes so I can set one down and grab another one, right? So you have to use both and think about how you're carving and how you're, thinking about the actual positive and negative space, okay? Okay, so the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna make sure that you have your paper ready, like stacked up. You have your ink ready. Maybe you have one of these. You have your roller. You have something to get the ink out of this. You can use this, but I'll show you how to do it without that. You need your registration paper, which is over there. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your paper that you're printing on, right? Super important. You're going to put it down on here, and you're going to trace a shape, the shape of that paper. Just like and this is like the easiest registration in printmaking history, okay? So I just put that paper on there, right? So now I want to know where my print is going to be. Biggest mistake everybody makes is they trace their block first. You trace your paper first, because when you do that, then you just have to take your block and say, I want it to be maybe like right there on my paper. And so a lot of times it won't be equal on all sides. So in printmaking, what they call is weighted at the bottom. So you can always get three sides equal, and then at the bottom you have a little bit extra. And that's where you can sign your edition and your name. So it doesn't have to be equal on all sides. If you want to get technical and get a ruler and measure and be perfect, but in most cases you can just kind of stand over it and look and say, okay, that looks good, that looks good, I like that, and then you trace it again. And so you can start to imagine what's happening now, because when I ink it up and I roll it, I'm going to lift it up carefully, put this down, make sure it's lined up, make sure my hands don't have ink on it, and then I'm going to take my paper, I'm going to hold this in the middle, and I'm going to slide this 2 fingers right here, and make sure not to touch it, because a lot of times what will happen is people aren't paying attention and they'll touch it before, and then the ink will get right there on the paper. Or their fingers are dirty and they'll have fingerprints all over it. So you slide it in, and then you find where that line is, and then you just drop it. And you don't move, and then you just take your fingers and you go like that, and then you start rubbing your hands over. Okay? So, what does that look like? So the key to using the ink is to not, for some reason, a lot of people will take it and they'll put too much out, but you kind of want to get a nice little spread at the top, okay? And for some reason, people see that there's some kind of like weird thing, but people just start moving it all over. And they'll just keep spreading it out. What did I tell you about that? It dries out. The more you move it, faster it dries out. So all you want to do is just touch it a little bit, and then just kind of like keep it like contained. Don't start spreading it out. Like keep it contained. Just touch it a little bit. And look, I've already got ink on my hand. So that's, I think this was all over it somehow. And when you get ready to start on your block, okay, so I'm going to start to get this going. Now, you hear that sound? If you see that if it's doing that, you have too much on your roller. You have to kind of keep moving it without spreading it out too much until you kind of get what I call a Velcro sound. You hear that? And then once you're ready, you just start to roll it on. And you come back and you get some more. And you want to go multiple directions. And the sound that you're getting on here is the same sound that you want to get on the block. Okay, all right, so now my hands are clean. I got the same sticky sound on here. I'm going to reach up under here. I'm going to put it in place. And drop it. I'm going to get my paper. Remember to hold it with 2 fingers here. Find the bottom. Use 2 fingers to slide it into place. And then you just drop it down. And then if you want, you can use something like this. Or you can just, what I like to do is use my fingertips and this part of my hand. And you can kind of feel your hand warming up a little bit. Pull it off, and there you have your print. Okay? And then what you do is you make sure you find a place where you can start to line them up. And then move your block. And usually once you have one layer on, you just got to go. And sometimes after you have the first ink layer on, it starts, it doesn't take as long to do the prints that follow after that. And you'll have to do 5, an addition of 5. Does that mean you'll have more than 5? Yeah, you could probably print 10 and then pick the 5 best, right? There's another thing that we can talk about that you may be interested in. It's called Artist Proofs, where it allows you to kind of just have fun. And so what's the idea of an addition? The idea of an addition is that, say you decide your edition is going to be 30. You print 30 of these, and when you're done with those 30, you take this plate and you destroy it. So you can't print anymore, and that way when somebody buys your print, they know there's only 30 prints in the world. There's another one. So you just keep going after that, okay?